Chapter 9. Scraping Bottom. I drove back with a friend named Perry, the mechanic who loaned me the stolen motorcycle that landed me in jail. He and I had later spent time in the honor camp together, and now we were united again, doing drugs on a 3,000-mile trek across the country. Although we were road buddies, my plans did not involve him. It was my goal to change everything, people, places, and things. I rented my old room from Jake and got a simple 9-to-5 in a valet parking lot at Jersey City Medical Center. This was fine with me. I didn't want anything that would complicate my life. No pressures, just an opportunity to think and get some direction. That, however, was not what destiny had in store for me. I did my job so well that I was approached by the owners. I put them off for a while, but when they offered me 4 times what I had already been making, I accepted. My position allowed me flexible hours. All I had to do was schedule help, file accident reports, and interact with the hospital administration. Unfortunately, my supervisor used cocaine, and I wound up doing drugs all day. Nonetheless, under my leadership, company profits went up. The owners came back and gave me another pay increase, as well as a car and an expense account. Now I didn't have to punch a clock. This was a dream job for a drug addict and alcoholic. I showed up for a few hours each day to make sure the shift changes were in place, then took off to a bar to pick up drugs or go shopping. Since I had a good relationship with my employees, they beeped me when a superior was on the premises, and I came right over. In 1992, while all this madness was going on, I met Iris. She was a woman of faith from a strong religious background who made the mistake of compromising her belief and allowing me to move in with her. I accompanied her to church a few times, but couldn't make any sense of it all, and continued my downward spiral with this beautiful dove caught in the winds of my descent. I soon found myself missing days from work because of drugs and alcohol, and even made a few emergency room visits, believing I had a heart attack. During each episode, Iris was by my side praying. Many times I tried to leave her, not wanting to pull her down with me, but she insisted on staying together and confident that through prayer we could make it. I couldn't understand why she wanted to be with me when I didn't even want to be with myself. Although I was mentally and physically declining, business was still taking off. The owners of the corporation approached me again and offered me a position as a regional manager. Now I was able to travel throughout New Jersey and into Long Island, never on the clock, setting my own hours and using my time however I chose. Obviously, the wrong setup for someone in my condition. Again, I was either drinking, drugging, or shopping. And within a few months, my sickness was showing up in my appearance, attitude, behavior, and job performance. I ballooned from 157 to 193 pounds, and I looked like I aged 15 years. I was also missing in action for days at a time, much of that period spent battling nosebleeds resulting from coke burning out my mucous membranes. Soon I wasn't able to leave the house at all, and I was told that I'd either get help or lose my job. I didn't get help, so the job was lost. This, however, didn't affect my drug activities because I had a substantial amount of money in the bank, and I didn't miss a beat. I got up each morning and had a few drinks at the bar. Before noon, I scored some coke and had a few more drinks, then scored more coke, drank some more, and continued the cycle until I passed out. In 3 months, my account was empty. But I was able to feed my addictions with unemployment benefits and odd jobs I'd come across while hanging out in the bar. Frequently broke and sick, I disappeared without Iris knowing where I was. Once I was intensely afraid because I thought I was finally at insanity's threshold. Somehow I found myself in a telephone booth searching through a phone book for some place that could help me. I called a helpline and was given the number of 2 outpatient treatment facilities a few blocks away. The voice on the other end, sensing my panic, told me not to move. They were sending a car to pick me up. A Buick pulled up to the curb and I got in. The driver was a man about the same age as me. His name was Glenn, and he was a counselor at a treatment center called Aries. We entered an underground parking lot and took the elevator upstairs to his office, where he began asking me a lot of questions about my drug and alcohol history and related issues. His assessment was that I was definitely in need of immediate detox, followed by inpatient drug rehab. I caught an attitude. I knew I needed help, but felt he was completely wrong in suggesting I be put away. In my mind, this would confirm that I was a failure, so I told him I would not go into rehab, but was willing to try something else. He gave me some information about Alcoholics Anonymous and its 12-step program for recovery, then introduced me to a gentleman named Russ, who agreed to be my sponsor. As it turned out, Russ and I knew each other. He was one of the guys who maintained my cars during my racing days. Having gone through the program before me, he would be my sponsor. I took his number with a promise to call him so I could get started. I then asked him to call Iris and let her know where I was and that I was seeking help. I also asked him not to tell her I had a drug problem. As far as she knew, the problem was only with alcohol. He made the call, heeding my request for confidentiality, and drove me home. I walked into the apartment and Iris was entertaining a friend who was talking to her about insurance. She smiled and said hello as I walked past and headed into the bedroom. She quickly wrapped things up with her guest, and we embraced as though nothing had ever happened. For the next couple of days, I attended meetings with Russ. One evening, I stopped by a bar for a few drinks and didn't get home till about 3 a.m. I was pretty drunk, so I chose to sleep on the couch. Before I could close my eyes, Iris walked in and sat beside me. We talked a while about my drinking, and sensing how deeply she was being affected, I told her I thought it would be best if I just left. This saddened her, and she said we could work it out. I was shocked that she still wanted to put up with me. She then looked me in the eyes and said, "I need to know if you have a drug problem." She sat there waiting for me to respond, but I never did. After a while, she just got up and went back into the bedroom. Although she had asked the question, I was certain she already knew the painful answer. Over the next 4 years, my relationship with Iris continued to fall apart, and she became less and less supportive of my dwindling recovery efforts. Her sweetness gradually gave way to anger and rage as I drew her into conflict after conflict so she could get fed up with me and put me out. I couldn't go on my own, but I believed if I could cause her love to turn to hate, we could part without her experiencing any lasting emotional pain. To accelerate this devious process, I repeatedly blew the money aside for rent, the phone bill, and the car payment. This created such hardship that we were forced to move to a smaller apartment. I stayed high, never cleaning up after myself and hiding empty vodka bottles, which she would find and leave in the middle of the coffee table. On top of that, I reeked with the stench of cigarette smoke and was often dirty and smelling of alcohol from being on the street for days at a time. In the meantime, I was looking for a job so I'd be able to pay her back for the financial losses I was causing her. This would allow me to leave with a clear conscience. After a long, discouraging search, I landed a position as a dock worker for a large freight company. The job started renewing my self-confidence, and my drinking and drug abuse dropped substantially. Then one day, out of the blue, tragedy struck. As part of my truck loading procedure, I had to manually unfold a spring-controlled loading platform. On this occasion, the platform unfolded halfway, then sprang back to the floor with me holding the top plate. The force of this retraction, equivalent to about 900 pounds, suddenly being dropped into my hands caused greater damage to the vertebrae in my neck and back. The company put me on workers' compensation and sent me to physical therapy, which only seemed to worsen the pain. I went to see a neurologist who concluded from a series of tests that my injuries could never be reversed and told me I would not be able to work again. He then recommended me for total disability. The request was granted. I was totally shattered by this stroke of misfortune, which was reflected in the sudden escalation of my drinking and drugging. Now more unbearable than ever to live with, the tension in the household became so thick you could cut it with a knife. I knew the relationship had reached its end when I started coming home finding another man sitting with Iris at the kitchen table and occasionally walking out of the bedroom. Finally, I got the message and sadly turned the page on that dismal chapter of my life. That was March of 1998. During the course of the next year and a half, I did a 6-month stay in an apartment on Jefferson Street in Orange, using money borrowed from family while waiting for my Social Security to come through so I could move into federally subsidized housing. The wait seemed like an eternity. In the interim, I had to go on welfare to meet my basic needs. This was a very depressing period for me. I started seeing a psychiatrist who put me on an antidepressant as well as medication to alleviate my anxiety attacks. I also had high blood pressure and trouble sleeping, so my personal physician gave me medication for each, in addition to keeping me supplied with painkillers for my neck. When my money came through, I moved into a studio apartment in a senior citizens complex, the same building where my mother now lived with my stepfather. I received a settlement from a minor car accident I was in a few years earlier and put a portion of that with my Social Security to fix up the apartment. The bulk of this money went towards drugs and alcohol. I quickly acquired a new circle of friends who spent days at my place getting high. It was then that I was introduced to heroin, the very poison that caused Freddie's death, and the one I swore I would never do. Crack was the drug of choice among my buddies, and a favorite with me as well. With its constant availability and a steady flow of addicts moving freely about, my apartment in essence became a crack house. I tried to conceal my condition from Mom. She had her own worries battling a chronic lung disease and the depression that plagued her most of her life. She didn't need to be burdened with me as well. My attempt to keep her in the dark was a wasted effort because my addiction was as obvious as the nose on my face. Yet she never expressed any discontent. She believed whatever I had become was the result of my relationship with my father and remained a constant refuge where I could escape to lick my wounds. During these moments, she encouraged me to let go of my anger so I could be free to move on to a happy, rewarding life. Convinced that my fate was unchangeable, I humored her as she embraced this expectation, not knowing how much longer she would be with me. She was going into the hospital a lot then and getting sicker and older before my eyes. Ironically, so was I. Still, she never gave up hope. But in spite of her positive outlook, I knew my days were numbered, because after all my running, the madness I had been slipping toward for years, was now just footsteps away. My head was filled with strange background noises. I would hear screaming and wake up in the middle of the night completely disoriented. I was cornered at last, and was certain that in a very short while I would find myself chained in a prison of suffering until, terminally scarred and bruised, I came up to my tragic end. Consequently, I became obsessed with the thought of death, like the days when I sat in school dreaming about my own wake, that murky image that had taken form and became an ever-present reality. My demons were moving in for their final assault, and I couldn't see any way out.